Coming up next, This Week in Computer Hardware, Shield is here. Is NVIDIA's new gaming gadget worth your cash? A good $150 LCD monitor, wide dual CPUs won't help with Adobe apps, Ivy Bridge E, 6 Chords of Doom, and more. It's all coming up next on Twitch.
Netcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
Bandwidth for Twitch is provided by CacheFly at CACHEFLY.com.
This is Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, episode 227, recorded August 1st, 2013. NVIDIA Shield, Google Chromecast, and Ivy Bridge E.
This episode of This Week in Computer Hardware is brought to you by ProXPN. ProXPN is a virtual private network that allows you to use the internet the way it should be, anonymous and unfiltered. For 20% off your new account, go to proxpn.com/twit and use the code TWITCH.
Welcome to Twitch, This Week in Computer Hardware, Twitch's weekly show that aims you to bring the biggest news, the most useful information about computer hardware, whether we're talking desktops, laptops, or the ever so eponymous tablet, and occasionally even cell phones. I'm your host, Patrick Norton. If you can hear a lot of crazy noise around me right now, it's because it's pretty much turning into 3D printer week at Techzilla, where we've built the $300 printer bot Simple, and we've got a $1,300 3DS printer running, which was supposed to be done printing 15 minutes ago, which is one of the many interesting things about 3D printers, which is that the learning curve is fascinating and peculiar. Dude, do you have your Bootsy Collins glasses?
Yeah, I do.
Ladies and gentlemen, masquerading as Bootsy Collins from P-Funk circa 1978, Mr. Ryan Shrout, currently at the PC Per Workshop in QuakeCon in Texas. Boom.
I can't believe you made me put these on.
Hey,
yeah, so we're here at QuakeCon in Dallas, Texas, and our workshop is going to be here on Saturday. If you didn't know about it already, it may be too late for you to figure out how to get down to Dallas. But we're at the Hilton Atoll in Dallas. QuakeCon is still one of the world's biggest BYOC LAN parties. Plus, they also have other events. Now that id Software is owned by the same people as Bethesda, there's a lot of crossover. There's a lot more games they get to talk about than their own there. It's actually turned into a pretty interesting event as a whole. And then you also get in to having, one of the more interesting people to listen to that has the most interesting things to say. One of the smartest people I've ever met in my life, John Carmack, who is just finishing or just is almost finishing his keynote next door. So it's a pretty cool event. It really is.
What's your favorite thing you've seen so far?
Well, the show started this morning, so I'm going to go with I sat in on the keynote long enough to hear John talk about the new console generations and what he was allowed to talk about. And what I took away from it that I thought was pretty interesting was that he basically declared that the hardware platforms were so similar that any kind of discernible differences that software developers would have access to is almost going to be negligible.
Really?
So yeah,
that's a big deal.
Yep.
Strange but peculiar deal this week. Chromecast started shipping their $35 Chromecast, USB stick. The Verge has a pretty good teardown if you want to see what's actually inside of it. Essentially a Marvell processor, 4 gigabytes of flash memory, and 512 megabytes of low voltage RAM, and an Azure Wave combo Wi-Fi chip. It's kind of funny. Have you had a chance to play around with the Chromecast yet, Mr. Shrout?
Yeah, you know what? Actually, I got one in right before we left for QuakeCon, plugged it in, streamed from my phone, streamed from a MacBook Air. What I found was really dumb is you cannot stream from a hardwired network device.
Right. Well, which just boggled my mind. But
It's
kind of funny if you can run something inside of your browser. It's interesting because right now there's basically, onboard support. Well, first of all, the iOS app doesn't exist yet unless they've, unless the Apple Store has released it in the last 12 hours and I haven't found it. So it works a little bit better right now on Android than it does on iOS. Netflix works great, but as long as you don't mind waiting for this incredible spinning beach ball kind of experience, waiting for it to actually launch as it buffers your video. And I've had a number of questions on Techzilla and HT Nation where people are like, well, if I have a home theater PC or an Apple PC or Roku box or WTV or Boxy, what does this get me? And the answer is pretty much nothing.
Right.
You know, it's if you don't have a streaming device and you want one, it's cool. If you have a lot of content that you own already, there's some hacks with Plex we're playing around with to get your content onto it, or Twonky. But you know, hopefully we're going to figure that out by next week. But right now, if you have a lot of your own personal content, the Chromecast is a wicked ripping pain in the ass unless you can play your content inside of the Chrome browser, in which case just open your content in the Chrome browser and send your Chrome browser tab to the Chromecast, which is not the most elegant thing, at least to me.
It's not. But I think it's pretty cool for $35. I think it does some interesting things that, you know, if for an Android device, once they get the applications with all that
not Android, Chrome OS, not Android.
No, but Android does have support for it.
Oh yeah,
right?
But I mean, it's the Chrome. It's Chromecast itself is actually the Chrome operating system.
Correct.
Which probably hold.
I'm talking about when you if you have an Android device, I feel like as software improves, there will just be that send to Chromecast button on every application that you have, and it will be able to do that. And I think that's actually pretty interesting.
I agree.
I wish it didn't require external power. That's kind of one of those annoying things. It's like it reminded me of when I got my first eSATA thumb drive.
Oh goodness,
that was awesome because it was fast, but it required a separate USB power connection, so a lot of the convenience was lost. But I think for $35, it's a cool toy to play around with.
Yeah, I mean, and the reason it requires external power is because most televisions aren't going to actually handle power over HDMI at this point, or at least they wanted to eliminate that as a problem going into it. But yeah, you need a USB port. If you need to set it up a second time and you don't have access to the setup application, you're going to pound yourself in the head because it's kind of funny. It's so simple to set up, and there's so little documentation on it that if you have anything other than a standard setup, it's going to be complicated. But if you're just setting it up to use it at home, you're golden. If you want to move it around to different places, it gets a little bit more exciting. And Apple, if you're sitting on the iOS application for this, release it. It'll be much more useful. And then make AirPlay work on Android and everything else on the planet. And then like the Google Play Store and Amazon Video on Demand and the Apple Store and everyone to play nice and work on everybody else's devices. Just everybody share your DRM. And then there will be ponies and unicorns from the sky and rainbows.
It's nice to wish. It's nice to wish.
We talked a little bit about it last week. The Samsung 840 EVO 500 gigabyte, 1 terabyte. They are fast. They are cheap. And if the prices hold, if the cost per gigabyte holds, as Alan Malventano wrote, this will be his go-to for anybody but the most extreme edge case. I have to have all the speed to make fun of my neighbors and/or Ryan and Patrick SSD buyers. Are you excited? Are you ready to buy new SSDs? Or are you pretty good for the moment?
Me personally, I think I'm good for the moment, right? But it's one of those things where, you know, as soon as I have an SSD fail or build a new system or something like that, this would be the one I'm looking for. They're still not available. We looked last night when we were recording our PC Perspective podcast, and they're still not for sale. But the idea of getting you can get a 1 terabyte drive for $649. That's pretty awesome. You know, 65 cents a gig. We're getting down there again. To some impressive performance and impressive pricing to go along with impressive performance. I just thought the idea of what they were doing. I had this pose this interesting question to Alan last night was why is Samsung doing things so much better than everybody else in the SSD market, right? So the 840 came out, the 840 Pro came out, now the 840 EVO. Well, everybody else really hasn't done any innovation, and I think many people, including myself, kind of thought we were at the point where SSDs are SSDs. They're only going to kind of incrementally improve performance. Well, all we're really waiting for now is cost per gig to come down. And then somebody like Samsung creates essentially an SLC cache on a TLC SSD, and now you have a completely new design option in front of you, and it allows them to improve performance while also lowering cost, which is cool.
I got to say, you need to put on the Bootsy Collins glasses again and do the TLC on the SSD for the LMC or the MLC, because that
would be good.
You're going there in that P-Funk direction again. Speaking of P-Funk and bling and awesome or lack thereof, NVIDIA Shield. I'm probably never going to see one of these hands-on, which means I definitely want to get you on TechZilla to talk about it. What did you think?
So, you know, I've basically spent 2 weeks with device now. I actually brought it with me to QuakeCon to kind of see what people's reaction was to it. And it's an interesting kind of discussion to have about it, because I don't think, my personal opinion is I don't think it's going to be incredibly successful, but I do believe that it's a much better device than I expected it to be when I first got it. There's three I'll go with. The first one is, what does it do as a tablet? What does it do as just having a functional Android-powered device in your house, right?
Right.
The fact is, you can use it as a tablet. You can use it with your other apps. You can use Spotify. You can use Nest. I can, use web browser. I can do HipChat. You can do Skype calls as long as you don't want video. You could basically do anything you could do with a Nexus 7 or with your phone. You just have the benefit or detriment of having this controller permanently attached to it. So that means when you do something like, you need to go into the browser and then you want to take it into portrait mode, it's not going to focus on it because of the brightness. You have to hold your device like this, and that's a pain in the ass. I wouldn't recommend that for anybody, right? So it's interesting there. And then you get into the Android gaming side, and the problem there is not with Shield. In terms of Android gaming, this is going to give you the best Android gaming experience you can get. It's a very high quality controller, very it's kind of a mix between an Xbox 360 and a PS3 design. Great speakers, great display. The issue there is, what is the Android software ecosystem even? When we were talking about the podcast last night, debating with some of the people that were sitting in here watching, was, I feel if you're coming from PC gaming or console gaming and moving to Shield, you're going to be disappointed in what Android games are. If you're a person that is already doing Android gaming or iOS gaming and you're moving up to Shield, you're going to be impressed, because now you have that same functionality, that same gaming, but in a much better shell with much better hardware, much faster graphics, a controller, all kinds of interesting things like that. So, your kind of personal take on, is Android gaming something that you think is worth investing time and money in? And NVIDIA is pushing these developers very hard to implement controller support, to implement higher definition graphics, better quality graphics, take better power of the Tegra 4 SoC that is in this, because this is the first device with Tegra 4 in it. And I think that's the part that it makes me doubt the most that it will be successful. Then the last part is like the whole PC game streaming thing. So the idea being that anywhere in your house, you could take this, and as long as your computer has a GTX 650 or higher, almost any game, at least games in Steam, you could stream directly to the screen on here, play using the controller, and access it that way. And in my opinion, that feature, the whole PC game streaming, was actually much better than I expected it to be. The latency was incredibly low. The quality was pretty good. Some games like Tomb Raider, Skyrim, Dirt 3 were great because, the controller works well with those types of games. Kind of accuracy-based first-person shooters are much more difficult with the control sticks, and also because you have such a small screen. It's a 5-inch 720p touchscreen. When you are trying to shoot somebody who's far away, they're not taking up much of your screen when you're using a 24-inch display. So they're taking up way fewer pixels on a 720p screen that's 5 inches that you're holding at kind of typical arm's length. So I found a lot of, when I was playing first-person games, where I'm getting real close and I had the device close to my nose, in order to try to see what I was aiming at. So it's not ideal in that regard. But in terms of technologically, it actually works very well. Do you see use in playing your PC games not on your PC when you are in your house? I don't know, really. It's neat, but it's like I can't imagine many times where I'm sitting downstairs in my living room. I have my Shield with me. It's sitting on the couch for some reason. I go, I want to play some Skyrim, but I don't want to go upstairs to my office.
I would have an inferior Skyrim experience.
Right.
I don't want to sound mean, but I was sitting there at CES. We were all sitting there at CES, and I was looking at this, and I was like, this is the weirdest way to try to sell more GPUs and more mobile processors ever. Let's take the mobile gaming device, the PlayStation, the Nintendo Game Boy, which has utterly been crushed by cell phone gaming and tablet gaming. Let's develop a product that looks at that combined with the streaming off of your desktop. And I was just kind of, man, this screams like, it was just odd. and it continues to be odd. And I'm happy. I'm pleased to hear that it works pretty well, which is awesome. But I don't really see this being suddenly manufacturing a huge Android mobile gaming market.
Right.
Because there already is one, and it all uses touchscreen controls because it's all tablet and phone based, not joystick based. However, maybe this plus the Ouya will help, create joystick based, gaming for Android at a larger scale.
Yes.
How cool would that be?
That's what I think it's going to take for this to be a success. I don't think the PC streaming is going to make it a success. I think it will make it a more interesting purchasing option for PC gamers. But you need Android gaming to take off. You need native applications to be impressive, to take advantage of the power of this. I mean, we did benchmarking and some performance testing on this, and it blows away Tegra 3. It's like a 7 to 8x performance increase in in a couple of the GPU tests, and it's faster than the graphics that exist like in the Snapdragon 600 in my Galaxy S4 as well. So for the time being, it's an incredibly powerful mobile system as well as a very interesting kind of design. I mean, it's a high quality device. It's actually it's good to hold. It feels like it's worth the money. It's just there's a lot of other things that even NVIDIA doesn't have control over that are going to determine whether or not a lot of people want to buy an NVIDIA Shield. So
it's faces a lot of the issues that the Ouya does, and it's going to be interesting to watch. I think the Tegra obviously is going to have a smaller market because it's much more expensive, but could be cool. And I'm open to anything that helps bring more cool gaming to Android or iOS or any other platform. But man, to drop something like this right before when everybody's anticipating buying like Xbox Ones or PlayStation 4s going into holiday shopping.
Right.
Gutsy move, Maverick. Frame rating Catalyst 138 brings frame pacing to the AMD Radeon to read in a really weird way. What's going on? What's the word, man?
So, Burke, this is one I snuck into the show notes after the fact. I forgot to put the link in there. So if you missed it, that would be my fault. So we've talked about frame pacing and frame rating for a long time now. We don't really need to dive into what it is and what the problems were, but we all knew that the problems that AMD's had with Crossfire have been a thorn in their side for a long time. And way back when the HD 7990 was first released in April of this year, they gave us a little taste of a prototype driver that they were working on implementing some frame pacing technology. And frame pacing, for a quick summary, is in a multi-GPU environment, in order to present a smooth animation, you need to make sure the frames are as evenly spaced as possible. You don't want a huge frame and then a tiny frame and a huge frame and a tiny frame. You're not seeing all that animation. You want the frames spaced out enough so that it's a smooth, continuous animation. With Crossfire, you were not getting that. You are getting that with SLI today, but you're getting it with Crossfire. So a card like the HD 7990 that completely 100% depends on Crossfire to, make any of its performance claims as the world's fastest graphics card or whatever, it was a problem. I've never recommended the 7990. I said it's a total ripoff for what you're paying for because you're essentially only getting the performance of a single GPU. Well, one day later than they had originally promised, they finally released the Catalyst 13.8 beta drivers that enable frame pacing on a HD 7000 series graphics card. So if you have Crossfire, if you have multi-GPU setup, you can install 13.8. There's a new setting in the 3D settings menu, Center, that's called frame pacing, and it's on or off. And what's interesting is that it's on by default now. Even though originally when we started these stories, AMD was very hesitant to admit that there was a problem. They were hesitant to admit that the things that we were seeing were actually affecting users, that users would even prefer one way over the other. And as it turns out, not a surprise to me, people do care. People can see the difference. And so they are now enabling that by default. So we got that driver just a handful of days really before we left for QuakeCon. Actually wrote it during our 14-hour drive from Cincinnati to Dallas. But it improves things very dramatically in this case. If you have two GPUs and you are running a single monitor 1080p, 25 by 14, 25 by 16. Your frame times will be much more consistent. The frames will be paced. The animation, it will be much, much smoother with multi-GPU setups. So that's great. So if you're a HD 7870 user and you were looking to buy a second one and you play on a 1920 by 1080 screen or 2560 by 1440, one of those Korean displays, and you're like, I was going to buy a second one, but I don't want to until they fix frame pacing. Until they fix frame pacing. Right, this will get you up and running. But there are still some things that it doesn't do. It doesn't fix Eyefinity. And it doesn't fix performance on those 4K tiled displays, the PQ321 that we've talked about, because it's essentially using Eyefinity to create that display. So what this means is that if you are a user that has invested a couple $1,000s in graphics cards or $1,000 in graphics cards from AMD for a Crossfire setup, whether that be two 7970s or 7990, and you've also spent the investment in, say, triple 1080p screens because you wanted to do Eyefinity performance or Eyefinity gaming, you do not get any benefits driver. This is not something that's fixed in that case yet. It also doesn't fix DX9 games. It fixes DX10 and 11, but not DX9 games. So they still have a lot of stuff they need to do in order to kind of get on par with what NVIDIA has, but they've done a very good job, I believe, of once they finally allowed themselves to understand the problem instead of like plugging their ears and closing their eyes and going la 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 la, they addressed it in a relatively quick manner, right? So that's good. In Burke showing the graphs in the video version there, you can see the improvement as you go from the orange line, which was the 7970 in Crossfire with the Catalyst 13.4 driver, versus the black line that is the Catalyst 13.8 driver. So the narrow band there indicates that from one frame to the next, the frame times are very consistent as opposed to varying very wildly back and forth. And so because of that, the animation is smoother and your experience in gaming in that platform will be much better. But still work to do. It's like,
it's a start.
It is a start, but they don't have a timeline for when DX9 is going to be implemented. They don't have a timeline for when Eyefinity is going to be supported. They don't have a timeline for when 4K is going to be supported. And those are important questions. The 4K one is a super niche. Eyefinity is a niche. DX9, not a niche.
Right.
And their argument there was, well, we could only do one to start with. We focused on DX1011 because those are the more GPU intense titles, and that's true.
Those are the ones that make our cards look better.
Right. Well, yeah, exactly. So
no, I'm not trying to be mean. I'm just like, that makes sense. Concentrate on the ones that are going to make the most sort of difference in terms of the performance. And if they wait long enough, maybe they won't have to deal with DX9 because we'll have forgotten about DX9. So, for example, like we've all forgotten about Quake. How many thousands of people are around you now playing Quake? Oh my goodness. Ivy Bridge, Intel Ivy Bridge E processors available September, starting at $310. Tim Berry wrote this up on PC Per. It's real simple. They're on their way. Should be available as soon as September 4th, says Tech Power Up. The new HEDT parts are compatible with LGA 2011 motherboards and CPUs, or the CPUs bring performance and power efficiency increases to the enthusiast platform. We've mentioned this before. It's like the Core i7 4820K is the lowest end Ivy Bridge E processor, quad core, base and turbo clock speeds of 3.7 gigahertz and 3.9 gigahertz, 10 megabytes of L3 cache, all the cache, 48 PCI Express 3.0 lanes, and a quad channel memory controller. And then 6 cores you get for $555. It's the Core i7 4930K, 3.4 gigahertz base, 3.9 gigahertz turbo, 12 megabytes of L3 cache, and again, quad channel memory controller, 48 PCI Express 3.0 lanes. And if you have all the money, you are looking at the Core i7 4960X Extreme Edition, which is, again, 6 cores, clocked at 3.6 gigs base, 4.0 gigahertz turbo with 15 megabytes of L3 cache. And that one's going to run you $990. And oddly enough, slightly less expensive than the existing Sandy Bridge E-chips that are out on the market. So if you've been looking, if you've been waiting, if you want 6 cores of joy, it is getting to be time. Unless you want to wait for Haswell. That's a whole different story, and I ain't going to touch it. Have you seen it's been floating around. Christmas actually mentioned this in the chat room, and I wanted to bring it up. There's been some funny conversations. There's a picture going around the internet right now that shows like a typical loadout of drives and internal drives for a Mac Pro desktop, with the new Mac Pro desktop with a stack of crap next to it. That's all the stuff that will no longer fit inside the LACFA case in the Mac Pro. Mac Pro. But there's also an awesome DIY going around. People have been playing around this for a while. I think the first time I saw it was, I want to say possibly Tom's Hardware. But essentially they have, and Gadget's got a nice write-up. That's the MacBook Air. This is a MacBook Air with an external GPU that's like hacked together. So it's a PCI Express video card to the Mac's Thunderbolt port through a combination of 2 adapters, a boot camp installation of Windows 7, and third-party software. But it's delivering like frame rates like 7 times faster than the HD 5000, despite the fact that I think you're working with 4 PCI Express lanes and not 16 because of the nature. Like Thunderbolt 1.0 is like the equivalent of 4 lanes. 2.0 bring like 8 lanes. Your desktop card has 16 lanes. But yeah, just don't expect to buy a pre-assembled version anytime soon, says Engadget. The peripheral needs a desktop class power supply just to run, and Intel won't issue the licenses needed to commercialize Thunderbolt GPUs, which would explain why we keep seeing GPUs demonstrated in Taiwan and other locations, but nobody ever actually ships an external adapter for a Thunderbolt GPU. So, but if you are patient and a little bit crazy and don't mind a giant collection of wires on your desktop, you can get an external GPU on your MacBook or MacBook Air or MacBook Pro, which I just want to give, Larry Gadea at Tech Inferno forums. You are a rock star, sir, and I thank you for documenting.
I feel like
that.
I need to point out, even though I love this kind of ingenuity, is that you can buy devices that do this already. Right?
I don't.
So
think
you can buy an external. You can buy external PCI Express dock base that will function in this capacity. They're more expensive than what he's been able to hack together, but you can do it. It's just can you have to pay for the power supply and all that kind of stuff in this regard. I mean, Sonata actually makes one. I think we looked it up before the podcast started. It was like $400 or something like that. So it's more expensive, but you can do a lot of stuff with it.
In any case, $250 and a pile of mess on your desk, $400 for a pre-configured chassis. It just brings me joy. Yeah. Here we go. The not supported means that Intel will neither certify your product nor deliver at the moment any technology license for this kind of usage. As you know, this technology license is required to develop a Thunderbolt device in the market, and certification is a must-have to market any Thunderbolt product. So fascinating. Yeah. We should take a moment to thank our friends at ProXPN who are sponsoring this episode of Twitch. Do you want to talk about the fantastic VPN?
Absolutely. So ProXPN is a VPN, a global VPN, which if you don't know what that is, it's a virtual private network. This one works with almost any internet connection. It creates a secure, encrypted tunnel through which all of your online data passes back and forth. And why is this useful? Well, you can use it with any application, right? So your web browsing, your email, your file sharing, instant messaging programs, all of that works. If you've worked with VPNs in the past, you might have thought that they are a huge pain in the butt to get to work with all these applications. ProXPN has gotten all of that figured out. It keeps everything you do online hidden away from prying eyes, disguising your physical location and giving you unfettered access to sites, online services, no matter where you live or travel to. So, for example, right now I'm out at QuakeCon. If I was worried about the network here inside the hotel, keeping an eye on what I was doing, or maybe I didn't tell my wife I was going to QuakeCon for the weekend, and I didn't want her to be able to backtrack all of our IP addresses to somehow I was in Dallas, Texas. You could hide all that. It uses 512-bit level encryption tunnels, works with via OpenVPN or PPTP, your choice in that regard. You protect yourself against ISPs, like 6 strikes rules. Keep your personal internet usage private while you're at work. Bypass internet filtering and blocked websites by using this. You can bypass geographical restrictions for internet content using this as well. ProXPN makes your internet connection essentially region-free, as they call it. They have software for Mac and Windows that offers advanced controls, allowing you to select which programs and ports you want to route through Pro XPNs if you want it to be kind of not all-encompassing all at once automatically. It also works with your iOS and Android device, allowing you to use your data plan or public corporate Wi-Fi with complete and total privacy on the go. No app is required. They have world-class customer support, and even Steve Gibson gave it a great review on Security Now. So that tells you a little bit about what you can expect and trust from this company. Go to proxpn.com/twit, proxpn.com/twit for more information to sign up. ProXPN premium accounts are normally $9.95 a month or $74.95 for an entire year, but we have an offer for you. If you use the code TWICH, TWICH, you can get 20% off of the lifetime of your account. So that's less than $5 a month on the yearly plan. If you're not satisfied, you can cancel within 7 days for a full refund as well. So if this is interesting to you, if you think you have a use for this, go to proxpn.com/twit and use sign-up code TWICH. We would appreciate it. We thank ProXPN for their support of This Week in Computer Hardware.
We do. All right. We got time for a couple questions before Mr. Strout has to break off and get into the mayhem at QuakeCon. An email from Johnny about GPUs for Pro software. It says, I'm looking to make a purchase of a new graphics card for use with Adobe products such as Premiere and After Effects. I know that the more CUDA cores I have, the better. But what about the frame buffer size? Does having more gigabytes improve performance and rendering times? I'm not really going to game, even though I do have a triple monitor setup. This is mostly for multimedia projects. I am thinking of getting either 2X GTX 760 for an effective CUDA core count of 2,304. That'll cost me about $500. Or I can get two GTX 770s for an effective CUDA core count of 3,072, and that will cost me about $800. Or do you think I should just go all out and get a single Titan? Also, are there any scaling issues with CUDA core count in SLI? So, boy.
Okay, so that last one is important because it helps you answer the rest of the questions. My understanding is that SLI is not supported by those Adobe applications. So, it won't be able to take advantage of multiple GPUs in the way that your games can. So, the idea of buying two 760s or two 770s isn't going to help him in the way that he's trying to be helped. So
great for gaming,
in that regard,
not so good for the Adobe Premiere or Photoshop.
Correct. Okay. Correct. So in that respect, getting that one Titan is going to give you the most cores for, in a single GPU in order to, help perform in that way. It also means that frame buffer is not really, for a lot of applications, frame buffer is not that important.
Right.
Premiere and that kind of stuff. It's not the same as if you're running like a 3D rendering application and you need to load a bunch of these things in. It's mostly we need to flush this work through the cores. It's not trying to hold huge three-dimensional, kind of entities in frame buffer.
If you're dealing with like a 4K monitor and you have texture maps the size of Texas, all of a sudden frame buffer is a big deal. Even if you have a 1080p monitor or a WHQ 2360 by 1600 monitor. Any of those situations where frame buffer basically holds textures, and in most cases when you're using CUDA cores for calculations, it's not particularly useful. Cue emails to Twitch at twit.tv for everyone out there who wants to argue with me about that one. But so yeah, get a single card.
Yeah, trust me, I realize buying a single Titan is expensive. So you could get away with a single GTX 780 might be your best option in terms of performance and value, because that's going to be $599 I think, and you're getting only 192 less cores than you get on a Titan. So, but you're getting half the frame buffer, but still good.
Yeah. It won't be as good as for gaming. It won't be, the Titan should be a little quieter, right? Isn't that the whole point of the Titan? Quiet gaming?
No. Well, so if you can find a 780 that uses the reference cooler design, it will be just as quiet as the Titan because they're the same cooler. But the other third-party vendors' coolers will vary from implementation to implementation.
The man speaks truth. One more email before we go. Michael has a question about IPS displays. He's looking for one for $150 or less. Hi, Patrick and Ryan. First off, I'd like to thank you for providing me with an up-to-date and informative information. Secondly, I currently live on top of a mountain in Western North Carolina with 3 megabytes down and 1 megabyte up. I've been there. But if you're ever in the area, I suggest going to Asheville. They have some awesome beer. Outstanding. Okay, on to my question. I'm looking to buy a monitor for mostly gaming purposes. Let's see. Most of the games will be played on my PS3, but I do plan to move mainly to PC. I'd like to stay in the $135 to $150 range. The bigger, the better, as always. And I'd like to have at least one HDMI port. I also plan to use it as a mirror screen for an old iMac I have, so I plan to get a mini DisplayPort converter. Any suggestions for a converter would be awesome. Oh, and lastly, I'd like to get an IPS display. Hope this isn't too easy for you. Thanks for the awesome show. Dude, thank you so much for watching and listening, Michael. Boy, 24-inch is going to be the biggest you're going to get in your price range. I would suggest keeping an eye on our friends over at the Dell Outlet. I love buying refurbished monitors, but even one of their like refurbished 23-inch monitors is going to run you about $170. You'll find like some of their monitors around $130 to $150. You're going to have to go to about $170 to get a 24-inch monitor. I was nosing around on Amazon, and there it is. There's a pretty nice Asus 24-inch IPS monitor that's 1080p, and it's about $170, $175. Gee whiz, $157. Reading is hard. Yeah. Reading is fundamental, kids. Pay attention to school. But it's slim.
What's the model number on that Asus?
That Asus is the VS247H-P, the 24-inch full HD LED lit monitor. One of the nice things about that, it's got HDMI and DVD ID and D-sub inputs. Fairly low power.
The first one I found looking on Newegg was the Asus VS239HP. It's a 23-inch IPS LED display, and it's selling for $159 on Newegg. So we're getting pretty close. $150 for like a good quality IPS display. When I first read this question, I went, "No way can you get a good quality IPS monitor for that?" And I started looking. I was like, "Wow, these monitors got significantly cheaper."
Yeah, I mean it's kind of fun. I mean, look, you want a high resolution, ultra sharp monitor, like sort of one of the corporate monitors with a really nice glass from Dell. Like 27-inch one's that's not 1080p, the higher resolution one. That's still gonna run you like $600. Let's see. I wonder actually if they have any ultra sharp. Whoops. All those moments when you hit the wrong tab and suddenly your monitor explodes. It's always really exciting. But yeah, your best case scenario is gonna be about 24 inches. Oh yeah, no. So there's literally like 9 monitors in the 23 to 30-inch range on sale at Dell right now, and 23-inch, 24-inch, 24-inch, 23-inch. Yeah, I mean, if you want the ultra sharp, you're gonna pay like $300.
Yeah. Doubling up your budget is tough. I know if you've got that budget in mind, so you got to stick to it sometime. But I mean, I think even these $150 monitors today are way better than I would have ever thought, right? So if I go over here to the BYOC where there's 2,000 gamers set up, I almost felt bad. There's some people in there that have computers that I'd be embarrassed to carry around, let alone play games on. And some of them have monitors that look like there's 15-inch 4x3 like original LCD displays. It's I was like, hey, stop buying graphics cards. Buy a nice monitor once. You'll keep it for many graphics cards worth. So it'll be interesting to see when I get back later tonight. We'll probably go walk around the BYOC again. It's always interesting Thursday night, Friday night to see what everybody's doing, how obnoxious they get. And
when you go to QuakeCon next year, you should basically pick I think at one point you had like 24 monitors sitting in your office. You should find the VGA, find whatever monitors you have still have a VGA port and bring like 2 or 3 of them to QuakeCon and be like, you with the 14-inch CRT here. This is my gift to you.
I did see a CTR playing Counter-Strike today.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
But it's like, look, would I prefer a 27-inch high-resolution monitor? Absolutely. Do I currently work on a 24-inch 1080p monitor at work and at home? Absolutely. And, the Asus is going to give you good value for the dollar. If you have some more money, the Ultra Sharps are really nice. Samsung's got some good monitors, but $157.73 for a 24-inch Asus IPS monitor. You should be really happy.
I agree.
So hopefully that helps you out and you don't mind ordering off the internet. Dude, we should let you go because you have QuakeCon madness to get into.
Yeah, sorry to cut and run on you, but
it's all good. Anything coming up on PC Per next week you want to tease?
So I get to drive home. So
all 14 hours.
I don't. So when we get back, here's what we're going to do with the new frame pacing 13.8 driver. We're going to spend more time working on the 4K monitor that we have from Asus, that PQ321 display. They already started sending me emails about asking for it back, so I got to figure out new things to test with it, so I don't have to send it back. So that's where we're gonna do some more work on that and kind of see if we can figure out a way to get 13.8 to help in any appreciable way with those configurations. Other than that, we have a lot of reviews lined up for release next week that we are not putting out right now because of the QuakeCon madness and what we're all doing here. So I guess the last thing I'll say is if you want to, yes, exactly. Thank you, Burke. If you go to pcper.com/workshop, you can get all the details on our event that we're hosting here at the main stage at QuakeCon. I expect 1,500 to 2,000 people to be there. We're raffling off. I think we're at like $22,000 or $23,000 worth of PC hardware that was donated by everybody from NVIDIA and Western Digital and Corsair, those main guys. And also we even got a processor from Intel. We've got Gigabyte, MSI, InWin, Cooler Master, everybody on that list. I'm looking over at all the prizes stacked over on our tables over here, and it's a lot of fun. And if you are in the Dallas area, you don't have to go to QuakeCon necessarily. You don't have to register or go to BYOC or anything like that to come to our event. So you can just go stand in line. We'll give you a raffle ticket, and maybe you'll walk away with something. So that's what I would recommend. That's my plug for this week.
Yay! Oh my goodness, 3D printer madness is coming up at Techzilla.
I can tell.
3D printers have taken over my life. By the way, okay, first of all, hot plates are hot, but I used to work with pizza restaurants. I used to work with pizzas.
Oh, nice. You printed a chess piece.
I printed a 3D chess piece with a staircase inside of it. Actually, Michael printed that one.
It's pretty awesome.
It's this weird mixture of incredibly cool and, oh my goodness, this has its own profound set of limitations. 3D printing is taking over my life. And actually, so is your $500 build off the PC Per leaderboard, but we'll talk about that another time. That's it for Twitch This Week in Computer Hardware. I'm Patrick Norton.
I'm Ryan Shrout.
We'll see you next week on Twitch.
I think that angelic light behind you is amazing. I've never seen a lens flare on a Skype call before.
I need to
I've never seen one either. That's amazing.